Hey, welcome collectors of all ages. This is Mike with Jayhawker Vintage Cards, and the topic of today's video is changing how I collect vintage cards. Now, before I talk about that, I want to talk about my new channel logo. So you've seen it, probably if you've clicked on this video. I finally got around to putting some thought into a channel logo, and with the assistance of ChatGPT and some of you in the YouTube community that I sent my examples to, the 5 or 6 designs, I settled on one that, I shouldn't say settled, it was the one I loved when I created it. And special shout out to Abby, the wife of Ross Loves Cards. She told Ross, hey, if he just put all the words in the same color, it would make it look a little bit better. And she was right. Once I did that, I knew this was the one. So it looks a little bit different color-wise than what's on my channel, because the custom t-shirt company that I went to down the street from my office said that when they tried to put the cream color in, it kind of messed with the registration of the player. So they kind of went with an off-white rather than a cream color. But I got a couple shirts and a sweatshirt. So here is the design. Again, a little bit different than what you see on the channel logo, but I still love it. Now, the topic of this video: changing how I collect vintage cards going forward. The reason for that is, you know, I've had some health issues, and there's always going to be a time when you stop collecting, and you don't really want to think about that, but it's coming. And I want to have as much fun and enjoyment in this hobby. And to me, it's a hobby. It's not investments. It's not stuff about values and things like that. It's about having fun. And the most fun that I have, and the less stressful purchases that I have all been in person, going back from when I was a kid. You know, back in those days, there was no internet. So we bought cards at packs from the retail stores. We got cards from our local card shops and a card show. There was no internet. There was no eBay. There was no Facebook. It was all in person. Trading with your friends was another way that we collected cards. So I was in the hospital thinking about some stuff and watching a lot of videos. And I always watch a lot of videos. I've seen so many videos from you guys talking about all the stresses about collecting cards and buying cards online. You know, cards that are damaged when they come to you, or they get lost / stolen. All the different things that cards are misrepresented. And when you get it, I mean, you saw the scan, but when you get it in the hand, it doesn't look as good. And then don't get me started on all the grading shenanigans that's going on. So I've been thinking about this for a while. And a few weeks ago, I did a video. And this video, I guess, is kind of the third of an unintentional 3-part series. But when I got out of the hospital, I just passed my 6 months as a YouTube content creator. And so I did a video about that, which was really more about the influences that many of you have had on me and how you've broadened how I collect, in terms of what I collect, I should say. But then I did a video, my most recent video, about a card show I attended in St. Louis, which is the most fun I've ever had in the hobby, to a scale I can't describe, because I don't get to experience that living in Kansas, because we don't get the dealers at card shows that set up at this like they did in St. Louis, like a lot of you guys get in the areas of the country that you live in. And we certainly don't. I don't have the opportunity to hang out with a bunch of other hobby friends, because they just don't live anywhere near me. The closest one is Billy Ballgame, and he's 2 hours away from me. And Chris is a little bit further than that. So when I hang out with these guys, unless it's a random meetup like I'm going to talk about with Chris, I got to go a long ways. But I've been thinking, I've been watching a lot of videos about the things that people have been running into about buying stuff online. I bought a lot of stuff online, and I will continue to buy stuff online, but I'm changing what I'm doing. I'm not going to buy any of the bigger items value-wise online. It's too much stress. There's too much uncertainty. I've had so many negative experiences with things, cards not looking as good as what they look like in the scan. Dealing with PSA authentication, I've had issues with them twice. Once where they completely dropped the ball, screwed the pooch, and gave me a beautiful slab that was cracked. And just having the hassle that took me a month and a half to get a card that should have taken me less than a week. Just don't want to deal with that anymore. So I've decided no more big ticket items through online purchases. They're all going to be in person, and they're all going to be with my YouTube buddies, because that's the most fun I have. And just to kind of reinforce that, I'm going to go back to the very beginning when I started collecting. and show you some cards. So I started collecting in 1982 as a 10-year-old, and Nolan Ryan was my guy. In 1983, from the local card shop, a guy who I had already developed a relationship with and would for a number of years because he was my first mentor in the hobby. But I bought this Nolan Ryan rookie. Again, this is 1983, so it wasn't graded at the time. This actually was in a 9-sleeve plastic page on his wall, tacked up with a bunch of other sleeves with cards. That's how he displayed this card. And when I took it home, of course, I put it in a binder in a 9-sleeve plastic page. I can't tell you how hundreds or thousands of times this card went in and out of that sleeve because I'm a touchy-feely guy. I like to touch this. Love to look and touch my cards. That same year, I bought 69 Ryan for $9. So the rookie I bought for $11, I bought this for $9 from the same local card shop. And again, this card was also on the wall, and it came home and for many years was in a binder. Luckily, they stayed in good shape. A few years after that, when I was in high school, I bought my first Mickey Mantle. And this one. Now, all these that you see are in the SGC slabs that I bought a long time ago. I sent them off for grading this year. This was the first year I ever sent cards from my personal collection off for grading. This is still an affordable card, so if you want to start collecting Mickey Mantle and want to dip your toe, this is the one to do it with. And then my first big Mickey Mantle purchase, I was in high school. I went to a card show locally, and I got the 55 Bowman. I paid, I think, $50 for this. I'm pretty sure that was the price. I remember talking to some of my friends where I worked at, and they couldn't believe that I paid $50 for a baseball card. I'm glad I did. Beautiful card. Now, over the years, let's jump forward. I was at a card show, and one of the big bonuses about collecting at your local card shop or at card shows over the internet is you get to develop relationships with guys. So even though Kansas City doesn't have a lot of vintage dealers, they have a few. And so I have bought from a lot of these guys for the past 25, 30 years at card shows. So I know a lot of them. Well, I was at a card show and I found a card I really wanted. And this 58 Topps Hank Aaron. Beautiful example of this card. Now, the guy that was selling it, I probably bought cards for 20 years. I told him, man, I really love that card. Now, you don't want to do that to somebody you don't have a relationship with because they're going to make you pay out the nose if you tell somebody how much you really want a card. But because I had a relationship with him, he gave me a great deal for this card, right? So much so that as I was walking around that show, I found, which is mentally a twin, because I always think of these guys together, I got the 58 Topps Willie Mays. Again, an in-person purchase. I didn't have to worry about the condition. If I would have bought these online, I'd worry about them coming to me and how they were going to look. When you buy cards at in person, you have them in hand, you know exactly what they look like. There's no waiting for shipping. There's no any of that stress that you have when you buy online. You get to buy it right there. Some other cards that I can vividly remember the day that I bought include my first Jackie Robinson. I believe this was my first Jackie Robinson. It might have been the 56, but I'm pretty sure it was this one because this one was raw. And so I sent it off for grading this year. But I just remember getting this card because it's so cool. And I got a Jackie Robinson in my collection. Love that. Love that card. Went to a card show a few years ago in Kansas City at Harrah's Casino. A guy had just bought a collection of 1956 Topps. They were laying all over his display cases because he literally had just bought them right there a few minutes before I showed up. One card caught my eye in particular, and I got it and had it ungraded for a few years, and I sent it off to SGC this year for grading. But this beautiful 56 Topps Roy Campanella. Absolutely stunning. And this is a white back, which is the rare version of the card. Now, what's special about this is, again, I bought it in person. I'll never forget the day seeing all those cards laid out, and I picked this one specifically. And when I sent it off for grading, it came back as a 7, which the last time I checked, this is the highest graded 1956 Topps white back Roy Campanella that SGC has graded, and I believe by 2 grades. Beautiful card. Another show at that Harrah's Casino that I went to a few years before that or maybe a year before that, I was walking along. It's very dark in there. You can't see very well. And a card that I've wanted since I was a kid, it caught my eye. They're expensive, but this one, because it was an SGC slab, that gaudy number stood out. And so I kind of glanced at it with a side glance and took a couple steps, and I was like, wait a second. And I stopped back, looked at it, and I said, can I see that card? And I've done a video about this, but it's Sandy Koufax's rookie. A beautiful card. I mean, just look at that. Now, the reason it's a 1 is because there's tiny, you can't hardly see them, but up in that corner and that corner in the white, in the border, there's 2 tiny little pinholes, 1 on each corner. So that dropped this card down from probably a 4 or 5 because there's no creases. The registration is immaculate to a 1. It's probably a strong 5. Absolutely love that card that I got in person, and I will never forget the old man helping me because I couldn't even see that. It was so dark because he was not under lights. I was having a hard time seeing the pinholes. So he pointed that out to me, and I'm glad he did. I will never forget that. Now let's kind of move along to some of you out there. And this is the real enchilada. This is the real reason why I'm changing how I collect vintage cards. And that is because I love buying cards with friends. I collected so long. Guys, I can't tell you how lonely it was as a collector living in Kansas, and there's none of your friends collect vintage, and the shows just don't have not only the quantity, but it definitely doesn't have the quality that many of you get to experience. So I will never take that for granted, ever. So first time I met Chris from Missouri was a couple years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago. He was still relatively new as a content creator himself. But I drove from my town where I live to Columbia, Missouri, which is tough for a Kansas Jayhawk fan to go to the land of Missouri Tigers. But at that first show that I hung out with Chris, and he may not remember this because I don't think he was with me when I actually picked it up, but I bought a card I've always wanted from the time I was a kid. Beautiful 53 Topps Satchel Paige. Love that card. It's got one of those stupid little PWCC excellent or something. I don't know. Little sticker things on the back. That doesn't mean anything to me. It's just a beautiful example. I don't need that sticker to tell me that. Another show that I went to Columbia to hang out with Chris, I got this card. I've had several of these cards over the years. None of them, strangely enough, have been centered as well as this one. But it is the 57 Topps. I love that mantle card. I sold all the ones back that I had previously when I used to sit up at shows. But I love that card. Went to a show in Columbia again, and this time I met up with some new guys. So I met Joe Redneck Collector along with Chris from Missouri, who was there. Chris's friends were there. Joe, Coop, Doug, Video Guy 316 was there, and Billy Ballgame. And Billy was selling some of his cards to pay for some expenses. And I picked up 2 cards from him. One was a 60 Topps Brooks Robinson, which used to be Chris's. But then I also bought this card. And I know this card was special to Billy Ballgame because Ken Griffey Jr. is one of his favorite players. And I told Billy at the time, hey, if you ever want this card back, just let me know. I'm just going to hold it for you, basically, and I'll sell it back to you for what I paid for it. And he goes, no, you keep it. I'll get another one someday. Love that card. Beautiful card. This may be the card of my generation. Love that card. Later on, I went to a show in Boonville, and I got this card, and I met up with a couple other new YouTube guys, Rusty Vintage Cards and Ross Loves Cards, and I've got this card from Chris, who was set up there. Beautiful, authentic, I don't care. It was trimmed probably a little bit at the top, but look how beautiful that card is. That's the only flaw in this card. Love it. But I got this from Chris. Again, the experience of get these cards with your buddies is so much fun. Then I got this card in a kind of a bundle package. Chris was making a deal at a show. I just randomly ran into Chris and Tom at a show in Kansas City. And actually, Little Finley, the star of the national show, ended up being there not long after I picked this up. But I kind of threw this in with a bundle Chris was buying. And that's a 1949 Bowman Alec Reynolds. Again, just the sheer joy of experiencing these pickups with guys is so much fun. And then I'm just going to run through these. I drove from the Kansas City area to meet up with Rusty Vintage Cards in Oklahoma City. And I picked up some really cool cards there. I picked up this beautiful 52 Bowman Stan Musial down there. at that show with Rusty. I picked up this beautiful 51 Duke Snider at that show with Rusty. And then I also got a really cool card. I got this 1941 W754 Enos Slaughter. This is from a team issue. Got it for like $60, $80. I can't remember, but they're worth a lot more than that. I didn't know what this was at the time. I did research at the hotel later that night. And then I also got the box that those cards came in. And then a really special card that I got down there at that show was a 61 Mickey Mantle. Now, along with that 58 that I showed you, on the way back, Ross has suggested, now Ross wasn't there, but he suggested that I drive, make a little detour, go to Mickey Mantle's boyhood home in Commerce, Oklahoma, because the boyhood home that Mickey lived in was still there, along with the tin barn that they used as the backstop for when his dad and grandpa taught him how to switch hit. So I took this card, plus that 58 Topps, which I brought with me for this very reason, but I set them up against the tin barn and took some pictures of them. That was just so surreal. So this card was actually leaning up against the tin barn that Mantle learned to switch hit at. So that was memorable to me. And then, of course, a lot of these things, I did a video about that as well. So a lot of these things I'm talking about, meeting up with content creators, there are videos, so please go back and watch those. But most recently, a few weeks ago, I went to a show in St. Louis, met up with Chris from Missouri, Joe Redneck Collector was there, Ross Loves Cards, Chris's friends, Tom and Coop. And I met Mike Moynihan briefly. I wish I could spend more time with him. I'm looking forward to that someday because Mike's just a great, great guy, a great ambassador for the hobby. And really the first guy that I ever watched that was a vintage content creator. But first table I walked to was a dealer that you just don't see in the Kansas City area. It was Bill Chappell. And behind his display cases on tables, he had another table back there with some stuff just randomly laying on there. And I saw this item. I knew what it was. I said, I got to look at it. And I've shown this before. It's the 1936 R312 Johnny Mize. This is a rookie. Absolutely beautiful, beautiful card. I love it. Love this card. And I got it from Bill Chappell. And I got it with my buddies right there with me. I also picked up in a bundle purchase of 2 cards with Ross. I picked up this 51. Now this is one of my goal cards that I've always had. 51 Bowman, Roy Campanella, MVP year. Beautiful card. Last but not least, this is a card that I went out to eat with Ross and Joe after the first day of the show. I was like, man, I really want this card. And again, I did a video that discusses this more in depth, but I picked up one of my all-time gold cards that I've wanted forever. And that's the 49 Bowman Duke Snider rookie. Love that card. But again, what makes this all special is I bought these cards with my friends. I didn't have to sit on a toilet and order it through eBay or win an auction. I got them. No stress. No worried about what's going to look like when it arrives at my house. If it arrives at my house, I'm not going to worry if the slab is cracked or has scratches on it. I got to see it right there, and I got it. No shipping, right there in hand, and I got to keep these cards immediately. I can't tell you how many times I looked at this card and that Campanella on my drive home. I had them sitting on the seat next to me, and every chance I get, I'd pick it up, and I'd stare at it. Glad I didn't wreck. But, guys, I'm having so much fun experiencing the opportunity to pick up beautiful cards, big cards for me, at shows. I want to keep experiencing that as long as I collect. So going forward, the change is I'm not buying anything big online. I'm going to wait and save until I can hang out with some of you guys, whether you're content creators or just guys I've gotten to know through the hobby who just make comments. There are some of those that I've met. I want to do more meetups at shows and the big shows where there's going to be a lot more opportunity to buy good cards. So that is the thing that's most exciting to me. That's the change I'm making. I wonder what you guys think about that. Am I crazy? Now, there's definitely some cons. I mean, I'm going to have to be patient, but patience, that's not always a bad thing. But that's what I'm doing. And at least through Strongsville, we'll see how I do with this goal. But I think I'll stick with it because I cannot tell you how much fun and how much memorable experiences I've had collecting this way versus just going online and picking up something. So what I hope to do is I hope to see some comments. Tell me how you collect. Has all the shenanigans in the hobby changing how you're thinking about collecting. I think it's cool that a lot of guys are going old school and going back to binders. Now, I'm not a set collector. A lot of you are, and you're putting those sets or doing your runs and binders. I think that's cool. That's like sticking it to the grading company, sticking it to the collectors and the company and the fanatics. I love it. Collect not only what you want and what you like, but let's start collecting how we want and how we like. Until next time, all I want for you guys is to stay happy, stay healthy, and keep on enjoying collecting.